Hello, welcome back. We are going through B2B example sales stages, and we are now on validate, also known as deal review. This is the sales ops effect where we strengthen our skills as strategic leaders to grow businesses with integrity. So the stage before this one was develop, and it's like a deeper version of qualify. But at the develop stage, if you then know, do you know what? This is what, as a salesperson would say, this is what I want to sell to this client. They have this tweak that they want, and they want it within this time frame. That's when the salesperson is getting all of the real details, the time, cost, quality of it all, right? Now, validation is a purely internal stage, and I think it's necessary. It's necessary for deals that it's necessary for a sales team that is brand new, for one. It's necessary for deals that are outside of the norm, and that can be by time. So it could be something that they want quicker in a shorter time frame or much quicker than usual. So if somebody would start working with you in 2 months and they want something in 2 weeks, then yeah. So something that breaks the norm. And it's important to be done at this point because I've witnessed organizations where they know that a deal needs to be validated, but they wait until after the customer has agreed to it. And then what you have in a lot of cases, because it's usually money, what you have is a lot of deals that make it to close one that you've agreed to deliver to a client, but the salesperson just keeps underselling it just so that they can make their numbers because they can sell a lot more penny sweets effectively. They're just selling it really cheap, which is not good because it undermines your brand and all of that kind of stuff. But there are some companies that I have witnessed, at least one I'm thinking of right now, where the validation process was after the client had already signed. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. And the reason why, and I couldn't change it. I tried. I could not change it. But the reason why they had the validation stage after it was closed one was because they thought it would slow down the sale if the salesperson had to ask their sales director for validation to sign something off. It's like, you don't understand the process of validation, do you? But anyway, so it's good to have validation in. You don't always have to have it, particularly, like I say, when if you're selling something that's just off the rack, then it doesn't need to be validated. If everything is standard, it doesn't need to be validated. But if you're bringing in a new sales team, then you're going to want to validate their deals, because the stage after validate is proposal. And again, the sales manager, aren't going to be looking over a salesperson's shoulders the whole time. You're not going to be managing them. So if you've got a new sales team, then you're going to want to put in the validation stage, at least for a few months or so, at least for 6 months, I would say. And sometimes those stages could be really quick as well, so don't worry about it. At least for 6 months, just to check that they're selling what you guys actually sell, because you'll be surprised the amount of salespeople that have a completely different understanding about what product or service that you're offering, what that is at all. And so therefore they end up accidentally mis-selling it and things like that. So you want to have a senior person or person's eye on every single deal. If the salespeople are new, or if they are selling something outside of the norm. And the validation stage ideally should be extremely quick. It can be one meeting. It can be one checklist to just tick off. Usually there would be a checklist inside the meeting that people can use. Or you have that built into your CRM system so that you don't actually have to have verbal conversations. I still think verbal conversations are valuable because people have questions, but depending on the volume of deals that you're going through, that might not work. So you're going to want to have automated things that happen through the system, and it just, or the proposal gets sent to a senior person to review. The pre-proposal, as it were, gets sent to whoever it is that needs to review, and they have their checklist to just tick everything off. So let's say your seller has done a few of their meetings at the develop stage. They've got their pre-proposal ready because that's what they'd be creating, right? Because they need to get this thing validated. So we're going to use the example of there's something outside of the norm. So they want to sell it for a different price. Okay. Maybe they're selling it for slightly cheaper because if we win this client, then that opens us up to another 10 clients that you wouldn't usually be able to get. So there's a good potential there, right? So that should be validated. A standard business developer shouldn't be able to make a company decision like that. Otherwise, when you do give people ultimate freedom when they haven't had the experience to do it and they're just not in the position to do that, then you will have problems later on down the line because you will not be able to deliver to that client's expectations. So if it's outside of the norm and we have to go through a validation process, that validation process could be as simple as the reviewer or reviewers having their really basic, simple checklist, and they look at the information that the salesperson has provided to them, and they're just going, okay, so this is what's different. Can our delivery department, whatever that is, operations, the technical team, whoever it is, your account managers, can we work with that? Yes or no? Yes or no, or you've got more questions. I would say that checklists are needed. You don't want to let people just roam free with how they're reviewing a deal because they're not going to be salespeople. They're going to be looking at deals from a completely different perspective. You want to keep them focused. So as sales ops, that's where you come in to making sure that the checklists that they're working with are ones that the salespeople agree to. Because if the salespeople know what they're going to be checking, then the salespeople can make sure that they already provide that information the first time round. And so it could be as simple as it going to the reviewers, like the project management team, the finance team, just check the money and things like that. Like, would that actually work, or would that put us in a tight situation? And have the real questions asked. Chances are they'll be talking to the salesperson's manager instead of the salesperson, but ideally it'd be better to have the salesperson in the room. But it can be sorted out in one meeting. If you send, if the process is to send all of that information before the pre-proposal, as it were, because this is all internal, with all of the information in, then have those internal questions asked. Because if it is something like, if it is the case that the salesperson is underselling monetarily because it opens us up to a bigger market, then that's when you're going to want to bring in marketing. Because the whole opening us up to a bigger market, there's so much potential, but if there's no action plan around that, then you are just going to lose the money. You're just hoping that people are going to go after this bigger market. And the salesperson is going to be focused on the sale right in front of them because they've got their target to hit. That's their job. But if that is what you're sacrificing the immediate money for the potential of the market, then that's a plan that needs to be worked out between the sales team, sales operations, and marketing operations. Okay, so there's going to be a focus needed in that area. Do we have the manpower to go into that area, to be putting lots of marketing into that area? If you don't, then are you just expecting the salesperson to do it all on their own? Is that likely to reap the benefits? Do we get the balance of us not getting the immediate money? You see what I mean? If it's something like time where they want something really quickly, then you're going to want to be speaking to your operations team. If they want something to start in July, do you have enough people to support this client in July? Or is July actually a really quiet month that's going to be difficult for you? That's the reason why you do need to have that validation point if the deal is different from the norm, or if you're creating a brand new sales team and you need that for a couple of months. Because having it after it's closed won, you would hope that people would learn lessons, but they don't. Because in some cases, depending on the kind of company that you're working in, if you're running your own business, then I imagine you wouldn't have this. But depending on the kind of company that you're working in, there are some sales managers that would quite happily just sign something off, even if they know it's a bit dodgy, because again, their focus is on their numbers. Their focus is not on business health, right? So you can't expect them to be thinking about it in that sense. You know, people will say that in conversation, but honestly, a salesperson is thinking about their numbers and their numbers alone in most cases, right? So you just be aware of that, and you have that process built in with the instructions that everybody understands. Even putting in some time in your diary, in the diaries, depending on how big the business is, but the reviewers, if there's a set time, this is how I've done it, create a set time. It was on Thursday afternoons. Thursdays at 3, right? So it worked for lots of different time zones. Not all of them, obviously, but Thursdays at 3, that time was set aside for deal reviews, for validation. And if there were no deals to be reviewed, okay, it just got cancelled. But if there were deals to be reviewed, then that time was set aside and everybody needed to be there, because you wouldn't have the excuse of, oh, I couldn't make it to that meeting, so that's why I didn't have time to review this deal. It shouldn't have gone through. No. We don't want to have this stage in the sales cycle to slow deals down. It's to make sure that we're going for deals that are a strategic fit, so that it doesn't come back to bite us in the rear afterwards. That's the point of it, right? So again, that can be called validation. It can be called deal review. It doesn't really matter. And you don't always need it. So if you can build it into your processes that it gets triggered if something changes, then that's the way it works. Because what you don't want is to have it on really basic stuff that you're just doing all of the time, because that will just slow it down and it will annoy your salespeople. So that's not helpful. But tell me if you use deal reviews or validation. Is this completely new to you? Do you call it something else? Is there something that you add into validation that I haven't mentioned? Because, as you can imagine, if it is validated, the deal goes on. If it isn't, then it goes out. It's another closed, not qualified, right? It's after validation that you have a qualified deal, because it's qualified at a business level. So again, if you didn't have the validation stage at all, because you're selling a lot of routine things, then you basically just go from develop to propose, because the salesperson would be creating their standard their proposal anyway. And so therefore you just skip a stage, no problem. But let me know what you think about that, because next week we will be talking about the next stage, which is propose. So come join me on LinkedIn, because I'm very interested in speaking with you about this. And also, can't wait to speak to you next week. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please look at the list of other episodes. I'm sure there's another one that can help you. See you next time.